Ambassador Heon-woo Kim sat in the circular chamber of the Galactic Council and tried to keep his face neutral. Around him, representatives from 47 different species occupied their designated seats. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few existed as floating clouds of gas contained in special suits. They were all talking, but none of them were listening to him. He had just finished presenting Earth's proposal for the third time this year. It was simple enough. Humanity wanted permission to establish colonies in the Outer Reach, section of space that lay unclaimed by any council member. The proposal included detailed plans, safety measures, and offers to share any resources discovered. It was reasonable. It was fair. And like every human proposal before it, was about to be rejected. High Chancellor Mordock raised one of his 3 webbed hands. The amphibious leader had skin that shimmered between blue and green under the chamber lights. His large eyes moved slowly across the room before settling on Heon-woo. "The Council has reviewed the human petition," he said in his gurgling voice. The translation device in Heon-woo's ear converted the sounds into perfect English. "We find it premature. Humanity has only been a council member for 50 years. Perhaps in another century, such expansion might be considered." Heon-woo felt something inside him crack. 50 years was not a short time. In those 5 decades, humanity had contributed more to the Council than most species contributed in 5 centuries. Human engineers had redesigned life support systems on half the space stations in Council territory. Human doctors had developed cures for 17 different alien diseases. Human ships patrolled the trade routes, keeping pirates at bay. And for all of that, humanity was still treated like children who needed permission to take a single step. With respect. "High Chancellor," Heon-woo said, keeping his voice level. "The Chitris Empire was granted expansion rights after only 12 years of membership. The Valorian Collective received theirs after 20 years. Why are humans held to a different standard?" Ambassador Velthera clicked her mandibles in what passed for laughter among her insectoid species. Her multiple eyes glittered with amusement. The Chitris and Valorians understood their place when they joined. They worked within the system. Humans always push, always demand, always want more. Perhaps, if you learned patience, you would receive what you desire. Other representatives made sounds of agreement. Heon-woo looked around the chamber and saw the same expression on every face. Regardless of how alien those faces were, condescension. They looked at him the way adults looked at it. Tantrum-throwing child in a store. Captain Ji-won Park's voice crackled in his hidden earpiece. She was aboard the human flagship in orbit around the space station. "Ambassador, Earth is on the line. They're asking for your recommendation." Heon-woo closed his eyes for a moment. He had sent his report to Earth 2 days ago. In it, he had been honest for the first time in his career. He had told them the truth. No matter what humanity did, no matter how much they contributed or how perfectly they followed the rules, the Council would never see them as equals. The other species were afraid. Humanity had gone from barely reaching their own moon to standing among the stars in less than 300 years. That kind of rapid advancement terrified species who had taken thousands of years to achieve the same progress. "Tell Earth," Heon-woo said quietly into his hidden microphone, "that I recommend we stop asking for permission." He stood up. The chamber fell silent. It was considered rude to stand while the High Chancellor was speaking. But Heon-woo no longer cared about council etiquette. "For 50 years, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber, "humanity has been a loyal member of this council. We have shared our technology freely. We have defended council space with our ships and our lives. We have asked for nothing but the same respect and opportunities given to every other member species. And for 50 years we have been patronized, dismissed, and treated as inferior." Mordock's skin flushed a darker green. "Ambassador Kim, you are out of order." "Sit down, no," Heon-woo said. The single word seemed to echo in the suddenly quiet chamber. "I will not sit down. I will not be silent. And humanity will not remain where we are not valued." He reached into his uniform and pulled out a data chip. He placed it on the console in front of him. "This contains humanity's formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Effective immediately, all human personnel will be recalled from Council facilities. All defense pacts are terminated. All trade agreements are void. All technology sharing agreements are canceled. Humanity will no longer patrol Council space, maintain Council infrastructure, or provide Council members with access to human research and development. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted in 47 different languages, creating a wall of sound that the translation devices struggled to process. Belthera was on her feet, all 6 of her legs clicking against the floor. "You cannot do this. You need the Council." Hyenwu smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "No, Ambassador. I think you'll find that the Council needs humanity far more than humanity needs the Council. You'll realize that soon enough." He turned and walked toward the exit. Behind him, Mordok was calling for order, but his voice was drowned out by the chaos. Hyenwu's earpiece crackled again. "Ambassador, this is Captain Park. I'm watching the Council's security feeds. They think you're bluffing. They'll learn differently," Hyenwu replied. He reached the chamber doors and they slid open before him. Outside, the rest of the human delegation was waiting. 20 men and women in Earth's diplomatic uniform, all watching him with expectant faces. "We're leaving," he told them. "Contact every human in Council space. Scientists, engineers, doctors, merchants, everyone. We're going home." Word spread quickly. Within hours, human ships began departing from every corner of Council territory. Engineers packed their tools and left space stations with half-completed repairs. Doctors closed their clinics and took their medical supplies with them. Merchants canceled their contracts and redirected their cargo ships toward human space. The massive human security fleet that had patrolled the frontier reaches turned around and headed back to Earth. In the Council chamber, Belthera watched the departure reports scroll across her screen. She clicked her mandibles again, but this time it was not with amusement. "They will be back within a month," she said confidently. "Humans are too dependent on Council trade and protection. This is a child's tantrum. Nothing more." Mordok said nothing. He was staring at the data chip Hyenwu had left behind, and something in his ancient eyes suggested he was not as certain as Belthera. But he remained silent, and the other Council members took his silence as agreement. They had made their choice. They would soon discover it was the wrong one. 3 months passed, and Trade Minister Jaehan Choi stood on the observation deck of Earth's primary orbital station. Watching another convoy of human ships return home, they carried families, equipment, and years of accumulated belongings. Some of these people had spent decades in Council space, building lives among the aliens. Now they were coming back, and most of them were angry. Jaehan understood their anger. He felt it too, but he also felt something else. Something that grew stronger with each passing day: satisfaction. The reports coming from Council space were getting more interesting every week. His assistant approached with a datapad. "Sir, another message from the Valorian Collective. They're asking if we might reconsider our position on the grain shipments." "Tell them no," Jaehan said without hesitation. "We offered them a bilateral trade agreement outside the Council framework. They refused. They made their choice." The assistant nodded and walked away. Jaehan returned his attention to the view. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was beginning to understand what they had lost. On the other side of the galaxy, Councillor Thexner sat in his office aboard the Central Administrative Station. The reptilian official had always prided himself on his attention to detail. It was this quality that had allowed him to rise through the ranks of Council bureaucracy. And it was this quality that now filled him with growing dread as he reviewed the reports piling up on his desk. The first problem seemed minor. The universal translation software that allowed all Council species to communicate had started malfunctioning. Words came out garbled, or worse, completely wrong. It turned out that a team of human linguists had been providing regular updates and fixes to the system. Without them, the software was slowly degrading. Arguments were breaking out across Council space simply because species could no longer understand each other properly. Then came the medical crisis. 3 different worlds had reported shortages of critical medications. Vexner had dug into the supply chain and discovered that humans had been manufacturing these drugs. Their understanding of biochemistry was apparently superior to most Council species, and they had quietly become the primary supplier for 17 different pharmaceutical products. Now those production facilities sat empty, relocated to human space. The agricultural reports were even worse. Crop yields were down by 30% on 14 council worlds. Human-developed fertilizers and pest control methods had been widely adopted because they worked better than traditional approaches. Now, those products were gone. No one else knew how to replicate them. Dexter leaned back in his chair and rubbed his scaled snout. He had voted to deny the human petition 3 months ago. At the time, it had seemed like the right decision. Humans were too ambitious, too aggressive in their expansion. They needed to be kept in check. But now, he was beginning to wonder if the council had made a terrible mistake. His communication console chimed. He answered it to find Station Master Kareth's worried face filling the screen. The spider-like alien's multiple eyes were blinking rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. "Counselor, we have a situation at Checkpoint Gamma 7, Kyret H said, her translated voice tight with worry. "Another pirate attack? They hit a merchant convoy carrying medical supplies to the Preshed homeworld. 4 ships destroyed, 2 captured. Where were our security forces?" Vexner demanded. "They responded as quickly as possible, but the sector is too large to patrol effectively. We used to have human ships covering that area. They had some kind of advanced sensor network that could detect pirates before they attacked. Without it, we're always arriving too late." Dexner dismissed the call and pulled up a star map. Red markers indicated recent pirate activity. There were dozens of them, scattered across council space. He overlaid the map with historical data from 6 months ago, when humans were still part of the council. The difference was startling. Pirate attacks had increased by 400%. He had assumed the improvement in security over the past decades was due to better council coordination and training. Apparently, it had been due to human patrol patterns and surveillance technology. Technology they had shared freely, never asking for credit or special recognition. On the frontier world of Nexus 7, Dr. Yoonji Song received the message she had been expecting for weeks. The Council Health Ministry was requesting her assistance with an outbreak of hemlock fever on the colony world of Tarsus 4. The disease was highly contagious among several council species and could be fatal if not treated quickly. 2 months ago, she would have gone immediately. She had spent 15 years of her life working with the Council Health Ministry, developing treatments and training alien doctors. She had saved thousands of lives and never asked for anything in return except professional respect. That respect had never come. Her research papers were always credited to her alien supervisors. Her treatment protocols were implemented without acknowledgement. And when she had complained, she was told that humans were too young a species to expect such recognition. "Give it time," they said. "Prove yourselves first." Yeonji deleted the message without responding. If the council wanted her help now, they could send an official diplomatic request to Earth. They could negotiate terms, sign agreements, and treat human expertise with the value it deserved. She was done working for free. The plague on Tarsus 4 continued to spread. Without human medical support, the council doctors struggled to contain it. The death toll climbed into the thousands. Back in the council chamber, the representatives were arguing again. It had become the only thing they seemed to do anymore. Ambassador Velthera was shouting at a Valorian delegate, blaming them for trade disruptions. The Valorian was shouting back, claiming the Chitras Empire had been overcharging for basic goods now that human competition was gone. Hi. Chancellor Mordock watched the chaos with growing despair. He had called this session to discuss solutions to their mounting problems, but no one could agree on anything. The careful political balance he had maintained for decades was crumbling. Species that had cooperated for centuries were now at each other's throats. And he knew why. Humans had been the glue holding many things together. They had mediated disputes because they had no ancient grudges with other species. They had provided services and goods at fair prices because they were still building their reputation. They had worked harder and innovated faster because they were trying to prove themselves worthy of respect. And the council had taken all of it for granted. Enough. Mordock's voice boomed across the chamber. The arguing stopped. We must acknowledge reality. The human departure has created serious problems. Problems we cannot solve by shouting at each other. Belterra's mandibles clicked in agitation. What do you suggest, High Chancellor? That we beg them to return? That we admit we were wrong? I suggest we consider our options carefully, Mordok said. Perhaps informal negotiations? No, Dexner said, standing up. All eyes turned to him. No informal negotiations. If we approach Earth now, we must be prepared to offer them what they wanted from the beginning. Equal status, equal rights, equal respect. It's unacceptable, Velthara hissed. They have been members for only 50 years. They must earn such status over centuries as every other species has. Have they not earned it? Dexner asked quietly. Look around you, Ambassador. Look at what we have lost. Look at what is failing. The humans earned their place among us years ago. We were simply too blind and too proud to see it. The chamber fell silent. No one wanted to admit he was right, but no one could argue against the evidence. Every day brought new reports of problems, new crises, new failures, all of them traced back to the absence of human contribution. Finally, a junior representative from the pressured Confederacy spoke up. Perhaps we should contact Earth quietly, just to open a dialogue. Mordok nodded slowly. I will make the attempt. But I fear we may not like the response we receive. He's right to fear. When Earth finally answered his message 3 days later, the response was brief and cold. The United Earth government thanks the High Chancellor for his communication. However, humanity is no longer interested in council membership. We wish you well in your future endeavors. That was all. No room for negotiation. No hint of compromise. Just a door firmly closed in their faces. The council had believed they were teaching humanity a lesson about patience. Instead, they had taught themselves a far harsher lesson about the price of arrogance. Admiral Taeyong Lee reviewed the intelligence reports with growing amusement. From his flagship stationed just outside council territory, he had a perfect view of everything falling apart. His ships monitored council communications, tracked their military movements, and documented every crisis that erupted. The data painted a clear picture. The Galactic Council was in serious trouble. Admiral, we're receiving another distress call from Council Space, his communications officer reported. Station Gamma 15 has lost primary life support. They're requesting emergency assistance. How many people on that station? Taeyong asked. Approximately 40,000, sir. Mixed species. They have maybe 8 hours of backup oxygen. Taeyong drummed his fingers on his armrest. 6 months ago, human engineers would have responded immediately. They would have worked around the clock to fix the problem, saving thousands of lives. But those engineers were gone now, back in human space, where they were properly valued and compensated for their skills. Log the distress call and forward it to Earth, he said, but do not respond directly. We are no longer responsible for Council territory. The communications officer looked uncomfortable, but followed orders. Taeyong understood the man's hesitation. It went against human nature to ignore people in danger. But this was not about cruelty. This was about teaching a lesson that should have never been necessary. If you want help, you must treat your helpers with respect. Engineer Sunmi Kwan was eating breakfast in her new apartment on Mars when she saw the news report. Station Gamoan 5, where she had worked for 12 years, was experiencing a catastrophic life support failure. The Council's own engineers were trying to fix it, but they did not understand the hybrid systems that Sunmi had designed and installed. She remembered arguing with the station administrators about those systems. She had wanted to train local engineers to maintain them, but the administrators had refused. Too expensive, they said. You humans will be here to handle it. That's what you're for. That's what you're for. As if humans were servants. As if their purpose was to maintain infrastructure for species too lazy or too proud to learn how to do it themselves. Sunmi finished her breakfast and went to work at her new job. She was designing life support systems for a new human colony in the Outer Reach, the same territory the Council had forbidden humanity from settling. Now dozens of human ships were exploring and colonizing it without asking anyone's permission. And the galaxy was learning a fundamental truth. Humans did not need the Council. The Council needed humans. By the time Gamma 1 Thieves' life support was restored, 300 people had died. The incident made headlines across Council space. Investigations revealed that similar systems on 40 other stations were at risk of failure. All of them had been designed or modified by human engineers. None of the current Council personnel understood how they worked well enough to maintain them properly. High Chancellor Murdoch called an emergency session. For once, no one argued. The representatives sat in their seats, looking shocked and frightened. The death of 300 people had finally broken through their arrogance. "We can no longer deny reality," Murdoch said heavily. "Our infrastructure is failing. Our economy is suffering. Our security has collapsed. And it is all because we took human contributions for granted and treated them with contempt." Ambassador Valthera was not present. Her government had recalled her 2 weeks earlier. The Chitris Empire was facing economic collapse. 70% of their trade had been with human partners. When those partnerships ended, their entire economy imploded. Food shortages had led to riots. The Empress had been forced to abdicate, and the new government was desperately trying to negotiate bilateral agreements with Earth. So far, Earth had not responded to any of their messages. Councillor Vexner stood to speak. He looked older than he had 6 months ago. The stress was visible in the dull quality of his scales and the tired way he moved. "I have been compiling data on the human impact across all Council systems. The results are devastating. Medical capabilities down 60%. Agricultural production down 35%. Trade efficiency down 40%. Security effectiveness down 70%. Infrastructure reliability down 50%. These numbers represent real suffering across our territories," asked a representative from the Presht Confederacy. "I propose we admit we were wrong," Vexner said bluntly. "I propose we send a formal diplomatic mission to Earth and beg them to return to the Council. And I propose we offer them everything they originally asked for and more. Equal voting rights. Unrestricted expansion. Formal recognition as a major power. Whatever it takes." "The Council does not beg," someone protested weakly. "Then the Council will die," Dexner replied. "Because I have not even mentioned our biggest problem yet." He activated a holographic display. It showed a region of space beyond Council territory, in the area known as the Frontier Reaches. Red markers indicated hostile contacts. 2 weeks ago, a Council exploration fleet encountered an unknown species here. The species called themselves the Kresh. They are aggressive, heavily armed, and expanding rapidly into what we thought was empty space. The exploration fleet was destroyed. All ships lost. Over 5,000 dead. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Murdoch raised his hands for silence. "Why are we only hearing about this now?" "Because the military command was trying to organize a response without causing panic," Dexner said. "But here's the critical detail. We have found records indicating that human explorers made contact with the Kresh 3 years ago. The humans established a border agreement with them. As long as Council species stayed out of Kresh space, the Kresh stayed out of Council space. It was an informal arrangement, never officially documented, but it worked. Human ships patrolled the border and kept both sides from accidentally crossing it. And now that the humans are gone," someone said slowly, "now the Kresh think the border agreement is void." Dexner finished. "They are pushing into territory we thought was ours. Our military is not prepared for this. We have no intelligence on their capabilities. We do not even speak their language." The humans had translators working on it, but that program ended when they left. Murdoch felt very old suddenly. He had been High Chancellor for 30 years. He had guided the Council through political disputes, trade negotiations, and minor conflicts. He had always been so proud of his diplomatic skills, his ability to maintain balance and peace. Now he realized that much of that peace had not been his doing at all. Humans had been quietly managing problems, preventing conflicts, and maintaining stability while he took credit for it. "Contact Earth immediately," he ordered. "Offer them whatever they want. Tell them we need them. Tell them we were wrong. Tell them," he paused, struggling with the words. "Tell them we are sorry." The message went out that same day. It was not a brief diplomatic communication this time. It was a detailed plea for help. acknowledging every mistake, admitting every failure, and begging for assistance. Mordok signed it personally and marked it with the highest priority. 3 days later, a response came. It was not from Earth's government. It was from Ambassador Hyun-Woo Kim, the man who had walked out of the council chamber 6 months earlier. The High Chancellor's message has been received and noted, it read. Earth will send a diplomatic mission to discuss possible future cooperation. However, the United Earth government wishes to make clear that we are not interested in rejoining the Council under its current structure. If the Council wishes to have any relationship with humanity going forward, it must be as equals, not as junior members waiting to be granted basic rights. Our delegation will arrive in 2 weeks. Please prepare your proposals accordingly. Mordok read the message 3 times. It was polite but firm. Earth was willing to talk, but only on their terms. The balance of power had shifted completely. The Council was no longer in a position to dictate terms. They were now the ones asking for help. He thought about Velthara's mocking laughter. When the humans had announced their departure, he thought about his own silence, his unwillingness to speak up for what was right. He thought about 50 years of treating valuable partners with casual dismissiveness. The galaxy was about to learn that respect was not something you could grant when convenient. It was something you earned through your actions. And the Council's actions had earned them nothing but crisis and regret. President Sujan Park stood at the window of her office in Geneva and watched the sunset paint the... Behind her, her advisors were debating the Council's request for negotiations. She let them talk while she thought about the choices ahead. 8 months ago, she had authorized Ambassador Hyun-Woo's recommendation to withdraw from the Council. It had been a risky decision. Many people, both on Earth and in the colonies, had worried that isolation would hurt humanity's position in the galaxy. They had been wrong. Isolation had revealed humanity's true value, Madame President, her chief of staff said, interrupting her thoughts. The Council delegation has arrived in orbit. They're requesting permission to land. Let them wait, Sujin said calmly. Schedule their first meeting for 3 days from now. 3 days. But they marked their request as urgent. I'm aware, Sujin replied. Let them experience what we experienced for 50 years. Let them know what it feels like to have your concerns treated as unimportant. The chief of staff nodded and left to make the arrangements. Sujin returned to the window. She was not a cruel person, but she believed in teaching lessons that needed to be learned. The Council had to understand that humanity would not be pushed around anymore. Not now. Not ever. On the Council delegation ship orbiting Earth, Councillor Vexner paced his quarters restlessly. 3 days. Earth was making them wait 3 days before even beginning negotiations. He understood the message. This was what humans had felt like for 50 years. Every petition delayed. Every request given low priority. Every contribution taken for granted. He could not blame them for this treatment. He only hoped they would eventually be willing to forgive. His assistant entered with a data pad. Sir, you asked for reports on human activities since their departure. I've compiled the information. Dexner took the pad and began reading. What he saw amazed him. In 8 months, humanity had established 42 new colonies in the outer reach. They had negotiated trade agreements with 16 species, all outside Council jurisdiction. They had opened diplomatic relations with 3 species the Council had never even contacted. Their economy was growing at twice the rate it had grown while they were Council members. Most interesting was the section on military developments. The human fleet had doubled in size. New shipyards orbited every major human world, producing vessels at an incredible rate. The designs were advanced, incorporating technologies the Council had never seen before. Technologies that humans had apparently been developing quietly for years while sharing older versions with the Council. They were holding back, Vexner said quietly. All those years, they were holding back their best innovations. They gave us their second-best technology and kept the real advances for themselves. Can you blame them, sir? His assistant asked. We treated them as inferiors. Why would they share everything with people who showed them no respect? Vexner could not answer that question. When the meeting finally happened 3 days later, Ambassador Hyun-woo Kim led the human delegation into the conference room. He looked different from the man who had walked out of the council chamber. More confident, more relaxed. He carried himself like someone who held all the advantages in a negotiation, 'cause he did. President Park was already seated at the head of the table. She gestured for everyone to sit. Councillor Thexner and High Chancellor Mordok sat across from the humans. Behind them were representatives from various council departments, all looking nervous. "Welcome to Earth," Park said formally. "I understand you have a proposal for us." Mordok cleared his throat. His skin had faded to a pale green, a sign of stress in his species. "Madam President, Ambassador Kim, we come here to acknowledge our mistakes. For 50 years, we failed to recognize humanity's contributions to the Council. We treated you as junior members when you deserved to stand among us as equals. We dismissed your concerns and restricted your growth while taking advantage of your generosity. We were wrong. We ask you to return to the Council so we can correct these injustices." It was a good speech. Humble, honest, direct. Park listened without expression. When Mordok finished, she turned to her own advisors and consulted with them in whispered voices for several minutes. The council delegation waited anxiously. Finally, Park turned back to them. "High Chancellor, we appreciate your words. However, words alone are not enough. If humanity is to have any relationship with the Council going forward, we require concrete changes, not promises, not gradual reforms. Immediate structural changes." "What changes?" Dexner asked. Minister Young-ho Bae, Earth's Colonial Affairs Minister, slid a document across the table. "These changes: equal voting rights with veto authority on any council decision, unrestricted expansion rights into any unclaimed territory, formal recognition as a major power with all associated privileges, a seat on the Council's Security Committee, fair compensation for any technology or expertise we provide, and a formal public apology for 50 years of discriminatory treatment." Mordok picked up the document and began reading. His skin shifted through several shades of green as he processed the demands. These terms: this would make humanity one of the most powerful members of the Council. More powerful than species who have been members for thousands of years? "Yes," Park said simply. "That accurately reflects humanity's value. If you doubt it, consider the last 8 months. Consider what happened when we left." "This is outrageous," said one of the council representatives behind Mordok. "You cannot expect us to grant such status simply because you withdrew your services temporarily. This is extortion." Hyun-woo smiled coldly. "No, this is reality. You call it temporary, but we have no intention of returning under the old terms. We are quite comfortable operating independently. In fact, we are thriving. The question is not whether we need you. The question is whether you can survive without us." "You would let the council collapse?" Mordok asked quietly. "You would let millions suffer because of our mistakes?" "We are not responsible for your suffering," Park replied. "You created these problems through your own arrogance. You have 2 choices now. Accept our terms and gain access to human resources, expertise, and protection again. Or reject our terms and continue managing your crises alone. We are genuinely comfortable with either outcome." Dexner spoke up. "What about the crush threat? If they invade council space, thousands could die. Millions." "The crush are not our problem anymore," Minister Bae said. "We maintained the border agreement as a courtesy when we were council members. We have no obligation to continue that service now, unless of course we reach an agreement here that gives us such obligations again." The room fell silent. The council delegation looked at each other, communicating without words. They had come here hoping to negotiate reasonable terms. Instead, they were being presented with an ultimatum. Accept humanity's demands or face continued decline and possible invasion. Mordok stood suddenly. "We need time to discuss this among ourselves. Can we reconvene tomorrow?" "Of course," Park said graciously. "Take all the time you need. We are not in a hurry." But as the council delegation left the room, everyone knew the truth. The council did not have much time. Every day they delayed was another day of problems mounting across their territory. Another day of economic losses. Another day of the creche, potentially pushing deeper into council space. That night, Dexner could not sleep. He stood at the window of his quarters looking down at Earth's nighttime side. The planet glowed with billions of lights, cities sprawling across every continent. Less than 500 years ago, these people had barely reached their own moon. Now they were dictating terms to a council of species that had been traveling the stars for millennia. It was humbling. It was frightening. And it was entirely the council's own fault. The next morning, Mordock contacted President Park directly. "We accept your terms," he said simply. "All of them. We ask only that you help us draft the necessary changes to council law and help us manage the transition. And we ask that you help us with the creche situation before more lives are lost." Park nodded. "We can do that. Welcome to a new era of cooperation, High Chancellor. A genuine cooperation between equals." "Yes," Mordock said softly. "Between equals. As it should have been from the beginning." Ambassador Ji Young-han walked into the council chamber for the first time and paused to take in the changes. The circular room looked different from the historical recordings she had studied. The seating arrangement had been restructured, where humans once sat near the back, considered junior members of marginal importance. There was now a prominent position at the high table, right next to the High Chancellor himself. She took her seat in that position and felt the weight of every alien eye in the room upon her. Some looked at her with respect, others with resentment, a few with barely concealed fear. She met their gazes calmly. She had not asked for their fear, but she would not apologize for their discomfort either. They had created this situation themselves. High Chancellor Mordock opened the session with traditional words of greeting. But there was nothing traditional about what followed. The first order of business was the formal ratification of humanity's new status. The vote was called. 43 species voted in favor. For abstained, none voted against. The abstentions came from species who resented the rapid change, but were not foolish enough to oppose it openly. "The motion passes," Mordock announced. "Humanity is hereby recognized as a major power within the Galactic Council, with all associated rights and privileges. This includes veto authority, unrestricted expansion rights, and a permanent seat on the Security Committee." Applause followed, though it sounded forced from some corners of the chamber. Ji Young accepted it without emotion. This recognition should have come decades ago. That it had taken a crisis to force the Council's hand said everything about their previous attitudes. Ambassador Han Mordock continued. "Earth has indicated it wishes to propose significant reforms to Council governance. The floor is yours." Gilng stood and activated a holographic display. "Thank you, High Chancellor. The proposal before you addresses a fundamental weakness in Council structure. For too long, this body has allowed majority opinion to override legitimate minority concerns. It has permitted powerful species to dominate weaker ones. It has created a culture where contributions are expected, but respect is withheld until some arbitrary standard is met. This must change." She outlined the reforms. Term limits for council positions to prevent entrenched power. Mandatory reviews of membership status to ensure fair treatment. Clear standards for advancement based on contribution rather than time served. Protection mechanisms for smaller species to prevent exploitation. Transparency requirements for all council decisions. These reforms will make the council more just, she concluded. They will ensure that no species ever experiences what humanity experienced. They will create an organization actually worthy of the loyalty it demands from its members. Councillor Vexner was the first to speak in support. "I endorse this proposal completely. We have seen the cost of our old ways. We cannot afford to repeat those mistakes." The debate lasted 3 hours. Some representatives argued the reforms went too far. Others said they did not go far enough. But in the end, the vote was clear. The reforms passed with overwhelming support. The council had been transformed from a hierarchical system dominated by ancient species into something closer to a genuine alliance of equals. Captain Dongjon. Shin commanded the human contingent of a joint council fleet heading toward Kresh space. His flagship was the newest vessel in Earth's navy, equipped with advanced weapons and defensive systems that made most council ships look like antiques. Around him, ships from 17 different species flew in formation. It was the largest cooperative military operation in council history. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Kresh Command," his communications officer reported. "They want to talk." "Put them through," Dongjun ordered. The view screen activated, showing a Kresh commander. The alien looked vaguely reptilian with too many teeth and eyes that glowed an unsettling yellow. The translation software, newly updated with human linguistic improvements, handled the conversation smoothly. "Human commander," the Kresh said. "We were told that the border agreement was void." "We were told that council species had withdrawn from this region." "You were told incorrectly," Dongjun replied. "The agreement still stands. Council species remain in this territory. Your recent incursions have violated the established borders. Withdraw your forces immediately. And if we refuse," Dongjun smiled without humor, "then you'll discover why it is unwise to break agreements with humans. We maintained peace between our peoples for 3 years. We can maintain peace by destroying your invasion fleet if necessary. The choice is yours." The Kresh commander studied him for a long moment. "The human reputation has grown in recent months. Stories of your departure from the council. Stories of their desperate attempts to bring you back. Stories of your rapid expansion and military buildup. Perhaps we underestimated your importance." "Perhaps you did," Dongjun agreed. "Withdraw now, and we can renegotiate our border agreement under new terms. Refuse, and face the consequences." The Kresh withdrew. It took 3 days for their fleet to pull back across the border, but they did it without further conflict. The Council fleet returned to friendly space. Dongjun submitted his report to both Earth Command and the Council Security Committee. The message was clear. Humanity's military was not to be tested. Back on Earth, President Park met with Ambassador Hyenwu in her office. He had been serving as a special advisor to the government, using his knowledge of council politics to guide humanity's new relationships. "The reforms are working," Hyenwu said, reviewing the latest reports. 3 more species have applied for council membership in the past month. They see that the organization has changed, that it now offers genuine partnership rather than hierarchical control. "And the species who left to join our alliance?" Park asked, "Still with us. The Valorians and the Presht both prefer bilateral agreements. They don't trust the council anymore, even with the reforms. But they trust us, which gives us significant diplomatic influence." He paused. "There's something else. Ambassador Velthera has requested a private meeting with you." Park raised her eyebrows. "The one who mocked us when we left? The one whose empire collapsed because of their dependence on our trade?" "The same. Her new government wants to rebuild relations with Earth. They're willing to make significant concessions." "Set up the meeting," Park said after a moment. "But make it clear that we remember how they treated us. Rebuilding trust will take time and concrete actions, not just words." The meeting happened a week later. Valthara looked different from the arrogant ambassador who had laughed at human departure 8 months earlier. Her exoskeleton was dull, her movements subdued. She stood before President Park with obvious difficulty, pride warring with necessity. "Madam President," she began, her mandibles clicking softly, "I come to apologize personally for my behavior and my government's actions. We treated humanity with contempt. We believed ourselves superior because of our age and our historical accomplishments. We were wrong. Painfully, devastatingly wrong." "Yes, you were," Park said, without softening her tone. "Your empire's economy collapsed. Your government fell. Thousands of your people went hungry. All because you could not treat your partners with basic respect, I know." Velthara seemed to shrink slightly. "I voted against every human proposal. I argued that you should be kept in your place. I believed that giving you equality would diminish us somehow. I see now that the opposite was true. Your contributions elevated everyone, and by pushing you away, we diminished ourselves." Park studied the alien for a long moment. She could be harsh. She could make Velthera beg, but that would not serve any useful purpose. "What does your new government offer?" "Full diplomatic relations. Fair trade agreements. Technology exchange on equal terms. And this," Belthara produced a data chip. The complete records of our intelligence network, information on political situations across the galaxy that might be useful to Earth. It is not much, but it is everything we have to offer. Park took the chip. I accept your apology and your government's offer. We will begin negotiations for a bilateral agreement. But Ambassador, understand this clearly. If your people ever treat humanity with contempt again, we will not save you a second time. Your empire's survival is your responsibility, not ours. I understand, Belthara said, and thank you. You are more generous than we deserve. After she left, Hyanwu smiled slightly. That must have felt satisfying.
Not really,
Park admitted. I take no pleasure in seeing an entire empire brought low, but I am glad they learned the lesson. Other species are watching. They see what happened to the Chitras. They see how the council had to change. They see that humanity will not be pushed around. That knowledge will shape our relationships for generations. A month later, the council held a special ceremony. Counselor Lixera, an ancient being whose species had been part of the council for over 10,000 years, gave a speech that would be remembered as a turning point in galactic history. For millennia, the elder said in a voice like wind through trees, we operated under certain assumptions. We believed that age conferred wisdom, that time served equaled value provided, that rapid advancement indicated instability rather than capability. The humans have proven all these assumptions wrong.